just like that, it's Thursday night, and you know what that means. It's party time with us. We're the Video Bros. I'm Bobby Munson, and that man beside me, he's the man with the angelic voice. He's Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, happy Thursday. How you doing, brother?
That was quite the introduction, Munson. I'm doing great, and it's Thursday. That's why I'm doing so good. We get to do Ring Respect Radio again, and it's the latest Trip Through the Territories edition. A real good one, Munson. This one was so fun to research and watch matches for.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get right into that right away, Papa Smokes, and talk all about it. But before we do, I just also want to mention a few things here to our viewers coming in. As always, make sure if you are watching on replay to subscribe to the channel. If you're coming in live, make sure to keep that chat nice and active. If you're watching on replay, leave us a comment afterwards. We're always looking to get back to you. And I got an announcement, Papa Smoke, as of right here today, about an hour ago, we announced live Saturday, June the 21st, Saskatoon. It's Prairie Pro Wrestling, the hottest seats in all of Saskatoon this summer. Seating, advanced seating now on sale. Message us at the Prairie Pro Wrestling Facebook page if you want to get tickets, just like this handsome young man right here, Mr. Bastard, already got his ticket seats secured for PPW on Saturday, June the 21st. Can't wait for that. Papa Smokes, I'm excited. More Prairie Pro Wrestling action to really get summer kick-started.
Oh, I'm loving this announcement. You know, there was the June show was just a little bit up in the air for various reasons, but we got it signed now. June 21st, longest day of the calendar year. We're going to be partying in the sunshine just off Broadway at the Cosmo Hall, where this is going to be great. It's going to be hot, sweaty, lots of beer, lots of wrestling. Woo! Let's do it up.
I'm not going to lie, Papa Smokes. 1/3 of the tickets have already sold out for the seating. 1/3 of those tickets, an hour on sale, and they've already sold 1/3 of them. The phones are lighting up, people. PPW, the hottest tickets in town. Make sure you get your tickets to assure that you're there live. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great action that night, Papa Smokes. It's going to be a hot time in Saskatoon. And as always, if you want to catch up on that, guess what? We got matches every Saturday coming at you, including this coming Saturday. We got the PPW title on the line. I believe the match coming this Saturday is Michael Allen Richard Clark versus Zoe Sager for the belt. So stay tuned for that one coming up this Saturday. But yes, Papa Smokes, it's time now. We got to get back in the old DeLorean. We got to turn back the clock to the 1990s, and we got to head to a little territory known as Smoky Mountain Wrestling, a hidden gem in the territory phase of professional wrestling. In fact, maybe the last of the territories when it comes to professional wrestling in so many ways. So this one is the most modern of all the territories that we've spoken about. As we allow Papa Smokes to get himself refreshed, get on back here. Maybe he needs to go grab himself a quick beer before he comes back and starts talking about Smoky Mountain Wrestling with us here tonight. But yes, here he is. He is backstage and now ready to join you on the screen. He has returned, the triumphant turn of Mr. Papa Smokes. But as I was saying, Papa Smokes, one of the last true territories and the most modern one that we've spoken about on this program so far.
Yeah, I always found that to be one of the interesting cases about that because largely the territory system had died out by the late 80s. There was almost nobody left by that time, except for a couple of stragglers who were still doing well with their local audiences, including Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which only started in early 90s, and then Don Owens Portland also made it longer than the other ones just because they had such a strong core group of fans there.
Yeah, exactly. So to be exact, 1991 was when it was founded. It was found by Jim Cornette, again, a very polarizing figure modernly in professional wrestling, but a very well-known figure in professional wrestling of the 80s, the 90s. Of course, has managed to keep his name out there and everything. And in fact, recently appearing in the movie Queen of the Ring as well, too. And a lot of people that have seen it were surprised to see Jim Cornette in there and see him doing his acting chops and everything. So it's been a little bit of a turnaround in some ways about hearing the way people have talked about Jim as of late. But we're mostly just focusing on the territory. We're focusing on the people involved with it and stuff, and that is just a part of the history, and that's the direction we're going to go with this. But Jim Cornette founding Smoky Mountain Wrestling in 1991. Why don't you give us a little bit of the history of the area that they served Pop Smokes and the arenas that they worked as well too?
For sure. And just I wanted to say a little bit about Cornette too, about his pedigree in wrestling too. He had been a teen sensation ringside photographer as a young guy, did very, very well at that, was selling his pictures not only to the fans as 8x10s at the matches, but selling them to all kinds of magazines, including the Bill Apter's mags in the 80s, and also Gong magazine and some of those famous ones in Japan too. So he started early in the wrestling business. He was attending matches in Memphis, Tennessee every week, getting his mom to drive them down there. He was taking his pictures at ringside while his mom was helping work the merch table with Christine Jarrett, the wife of Jerry Jarrett, the promoter. So Mrs. Cornette and Mrs. Jarrett became friendly, it became friends, and that kind of almost led into Jim's being adopted into the wrestling business by Jerry Jarrett. So again, talking about his pedigree, you can't ask for better than that. If you're a young teenage guy wanting to get into the wrestling business, wanting to soak in all that knowledge, and really at that time, Jim wasn't smart to the business. He hadn't had the boys smarten him up yet. So imagine having that experience, having Jerry Jarrett and then all the famous Memphis area wrestlers, all the guys that were based there, and then all the guys that came through there as well, from Jerry the King Lawler on down. He was just getting a wrestling education, especially in the kind of old school era of wrestling. Jerry Jarrett and the guys showing how booking can be done short term and long term, showing how a wrestling company can be run as well, in terms of always being organized, always having the venue and the tickets and the payouts and everything organized, but also knowing how to keep the buildings full, putting on scheduling cards from first match to main event, and then having wrestling shows every single week. You got to be in it for the long haul. You can't just put everything up front. Jerry Jarrett was a master of building up, they call it now storytelling, but building up his angles throughout weeks and months and to a big blow-off show in the future. And you know that Cornette, the original wrestling nerd, so to speak, was just soaking all this in, all this knowledge, and that was really his start in the business at that time.
Yeah, and I mean that's it. It's a great show to anytime that you're able to get that kind of way into the business or those kind of teachings along the way. It also makes me believe that in researching and watching more Smoky Mountain Wrestling makes me realize that is why we see some of the names we do, or the connections to some of the names that we do that wanted to work there. When you've got that kind of accolade and that kind of presence within the professional wrestling business, people are going to follow you. And a lot of people did. A lot of good names followed over to Smoky Mountain Wrestling and did the Smoky Mountain thing. And, you know, as a kid, I know that they were out there. They existed. I had heard of them, and I had this conversation with you because I remember the invasion, which we'll talk about when they started to invade WWF, WCW kind of thing. That's how I heard about them, but I was never able to find tapes. I was never able to access their TV from here in the Saskatoon area like that. Otherwise, I think I would have supported, especially watching it kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, remember that, Munson. That's a good point, because we'll come to exactly that towards the end of this discussion. A good part of its demise was due to the fact that it couldn't get a proper lucrative TV deal and just couldn't bring in the revenue required to keep it running. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. You were asking about some of the cities and venues that Smoky Mountain wanted to run. I think this was Cornette's idea all along, was to make a retro territory type promotion for those fans who still longed for that. And probably in the southern US, there were a lot of them too. So Jim wanted to base Smoky Mountain Wrestling out of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is, of course, at the feet of the Smoky Mountains. Very, very nice area in Tennessee and very central to a bunch of good wrestling cities and towns in the states of Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and I think they even plan to do some stuff in Georgia as well. So they were going to take the show on the road, and they did. They didn't quite branch out as far as they intended to, but just like the blueprint of the territory companies, they were going to do their TV in Knoxville each week, and then hit the road and do the circuit. And that was the old school method of making money from live shows and from tickets sold kind of thing. Nowadays, of course, it's a little bit different with TV deals and stuff like that, but Cornette was going to run it like the old territory promotions that he had studied and that he had loved and that he felt there were many fans that would still appreciate.
And that's the way they pushed it too. And it's something that we discussed. Like this was truly the alternative to the type of professional wrestling that was being broadcast on regular television, the WWF type TV, the WCW TV, for that matter. And it was after leaving WCW that Cornette came about making Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And when you watch the programs, you watch them, and that's what they push. This is good old-fashioned professional wrestling that you won't be embarrassed to bring your family to. They've got people in charge that are going to fine you if you do anything illegal. No foreign objects, no shenanigans kind of thing. This is going to be pure good old-fashioned pro wrestling. They got the guy in charge of one of the Armstrongs, isn't it? That's
Bob,
yeah, Bob Armstrong is in charge here, and he's dishing out fines as wrestlers are using foreign objects here for Smoky Mountain as well too. And I thought that was a nice touch to this whole thing. I thought it was great they were pushing that, and they even there's some straight up jabs against WWF and WCW. They go, this is the kind of place where wrestlers are wrestlers, and we're not going to make you put on some stupid costume and pretend to be something that you're not. Bobby, hello. How are you doing there, my friend? We can talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show here. We're gonna do the trip through the territories first, and we'll get to some of that stuff at the end. But yeah, that was one of the things that really intrigued me. It was like, this was truly an alternative, and it's really something I appreciate even more so now as an adult, going back and watching, and just how well put together that it truly is. Smoky Mountain really is a gem, Bob Smokes. I loved watching these episodes.
For sure. And that Cornette, with his eye for detail all the time, was going to make sure that the presentation of his product was absolutely perfect at all times. Perfect for what he wanted it to be, obviously. He had gotten Sandy Scott early in '91 to run the company. This had been a former wrestler, and he had worked in the office at Jim Crockett Promotions. So Cornette trusted him, knew that he knew how to run a tight ship. He also had Brian Hildebrand as the main referee. But Hildebrand wore a number of hats in this company too, including merch sales and sound and all that stuff. It was it reminds me a little bit of PPW. It was a real family put together business. Everybody was going to do their job and do it well so that the entire finished product looked perfect. And that's what Cornette wanted all along. Was just, he had worked for so many companies, including a WCW that was an absolute mess when it came to leadership, because the top guys in the company had to deal with the top guys at the network and everything. These guys were in charge. These guys were in charge. They were clashing all the time, and there was all kinds of problems, as we all know about, with WCW. So Cornette, sickened by that, of course, had quit and just thought, I'm going to run my company differently than some of these other promoters out there. There's going to be one guy in charge, and that's going to be it. His word is the end of it all. So there was no arguing. There was no bickering. There was no uncertainty about anything. It was going to go straight up the way he wanted it.
Yeah, and amazing not only the legendary names that he had, but some of the new talent that he was bringing into the territory as well too. A lot of names that would become quite well known in the business and stuff as well. And it was interesting to see. One of the first things I see is matches featuring Hollywood Bob Holly. Like when I started kicking off matches with Hollywood Bob Holly, I'm like, man, this is again once he got to further in his career with WWF, and they let him be that more aggressive side of himself when he became Hardcore Holly and he became more aggressive. You could see that side of him. But when he was Hollywood Bob Holly, something I never was privy to as a kid, because I remember Sparky Plug, that was my first introduction to him. This is a far cry from Sparky Plug. Yeah, he looks the same. He has charisma about him, but he had that arrogance and that viciousness to him when he was wrestling with Smoky Mountain, and it's really good. I can see why this was a top prospect at the time.
For sure. And again, all part of Cornette's plan was to balance proven, known, classic talent with developing youngsters that could be brought up within that system, hopefully be getting trained by some of the guys in the kind of Smoky Mountain style, the way they wanted it to. But again, that's not just Smoky Mountain. That's any wrestling company. You really, really should try and have some established stars that could for sure draw money at some of your shows, and then also be developing the young talent, find the superstars of tomorrow and bring them up. Cornette did a great job of it. Cornette, Scott, and the rest of the guys did a great job with that. And we saw some, Cornette went to some of the money makers that he knew from the past. I mean, Jim was going to keep his formula alive, the heel tag team, with skill, with cheating as well, right? The Midnight Express had been one of the biggest tag teams of all time, multiple time NWA tag champs, and whatever tag belts you could get them. The Midnight Express had them for a while. But once that finished, Cornette started his new team, the Heavenly Bodies, which at first was Stan Lane and Dr. Tom Pritchard. I mean, just great veteran workers in the business. Eventually, Lane would retire, and it would be Dr. Tom Pritchard with Jimmy Delray. That guy's a trip. I love watching those matches. He's real funny. His name was Jimmy Backlund, and they had found him in Florida. And that guy fit in just perfectly into that tag team. So it was always part of Cornette's blueprint to have tag team wrestling be a big part of it. Everybody knows that Cornette's one of the geniuses of tag team wrestling because he learned all his lessons from the old school greats. So again, the Heavenly Bodies were going to work with Rock and Roll Express, Morton and Gibson, right? That just can sell tickets so easily, especially with a good heel team that can work with them. And then also the Fantastics. We watched some of their stuff. Equally skilled babyface tag team. Those guys could draw money anywhere. So with those couple of programs, Cornette knew that he had the tag team scene, rock solid in his company there. He could always draw with a couple of those matches.
Yeah, he also had Vladimir and Ivan as well too, the Koloffs, as part of at the beginning there as one of the heel tag teams, which was great because again he was able to use them with the Fantastics at the beginning to establish the Fantastics as a top babyface team within the company. And I recall like the Heavenly Bodies making that invasion over part of the Smoky Mountain invasion in WWF and getting to see them with the Smoky Mountain belts. And my little wrestling brain at the time couldn't comprehend like I know of two companies. Wait, there's a third company out there. Like all of a sudden I'm scouring Bob Smokes through the old TV guides. I go to channel 1 or 0 or whatever it was with the guide that come up and it scroll through and you have to wait. And I'm waiting to see every hour, like, is there a Smoky Mountain Wrestling on my television screen? Like, when does this show air? Why have I not heard of these guys before? But I was so intrigued by it. I thought this was the coolest thing. There was another company out there. There was a mystique about it. And when they made that invasion, I'm like, man, there's some great talent as well, too, that they brought some of the best of the names from Smoky Mountain Wrestling over there to make that mark with the WWF audience.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up too, because similarly for me, I was watching some WWF at the time, and I had watched quite a bit in the past also. And one of the things that it was always known is that Vince and the WWF will never, ever, ever acknowledge the existence of another company. They never did. They never would. Even all the news and all the circumstances that happened and all the Vince still had his wrestlers appear for Japanese companies and a few other companies here and there, uh, here and there occasionally, but it was never brought up on TV, never talked about in interviews or magazines or anything like that. So when I turned on WWF Superstars, or I think that was the show at the time,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden there's Jim Cornette representing Smoky Mountain Wrestling with the Heavenly Bodies, and I was just absolutely aghast. I thought, what's going on here? Vince is having another company mentioned on his show, not only in coming out with those belts as well.
Yeah.
I was just, my mind was blown. And before the internet, and you couldn't really just look this up and see what was going on. I was just stewing about it for so long, wondering what the heck is going on here, and thinking how smart and how influential is Cornette to actually convince Vince to put his product on TV. Absolutely wild. So that was a mind blowing moment for young Papa Smokes as well.
Yeah, my only regret is not knowing where to find any of those tapes back then, because I would have been absolutely delighted to watch all the different seasons of Smoky Mountain Television that were produced. In fact, I'm still going to go watch more after this is all said and done here tonight, Bob Smokes.
Yeah.
I haven't even come close to scratching the surface with all of them. And we are going to share one of the matches I watched in the earlier stuff here tonight. Wanted to bring up a match between Rip Rogers and Paul Orndorff, two fantastic names in the world of professional wrestling. And as soon as this match came on, I'm like, I've got to pay attention. I like both these guys a hell of a lot. Orndorff in these early, in the early 90s, they're still looking sharp as ever, as clean as ever. And Rip Rogers, man, talk about a guy who can sell a wrestling match. Rip Rogers is one of the best in terms of selling a wrestling match.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of the geniuses of the wrestling business, even nowadays, because he has a training facility and he was one of the head trainers for OVW, which would come later on, but he would be one of the most influential trainers for up and coming WWE talent. Probably his most recent project being Pat McAfee, who's works out with Rip Rogers quite regular, or was quite regularly for a while there. But wow, just awesome. And it's too bad, that you as a young guy, or I back in the 90s, couldn't find Smoky Mountain to watch, because we would have consumed it, and I think a lot of people would have enjoyed that too, but their reach just wasn't far enough to get out there to the general large wrestling population. Otherwise, I really, really think it would have done better than it did.
Yeah. And I think that's where the whole invasion thing paid off in terms of getting their names out there and getting us to take note and everything like that. I just unfortunately wasn't enough to really sell it forward to get their TV anywhere closer to us, or any of the tapes in our area. I guess had I known a little bit more about tape trading at the time, would have been sufficient to try to find that. But it was a different time, a different era. It wasn't easy to consume pro wrestling like everybody has the luxury like we do now to flip on anything at any time from any company pretty much worldwide. And we're blessed with that nowadays, but not so much back then. And again, it was harder for pro wrestlers, because again, you're really selling yourself on working the different arenas and stuff like that. And with the death of the territories come about, you were being left with only real two choices to make actual money, which was WCW, WWF. But here comes Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and here's a opportunity for these wrestlers to at least have that taste of the former glory. I gotta ask, do you feel like, was it a detriment to them to be trying to run like the past? Because if you look at it now, I feel like there would be a definite niche audience for it, but because of having to try to fight for those TV spots and stuff like that? Was it just the sign of the times in terms of the TV deals and the networks and what they were seeing from the big companies versus what Jim and company were trying to sell to them?
Yeah, yes and no. I think that Cornette's general business plan was a good one. I think that in the South, it would have worked if they could have just and they were in the process of putting on good cards in various towns, doing the tours, having the local TV. I think they could have run a successful promotion on the scale of the old territory promotions. It wasn't going to get huge like WCW or WWF, but I think Cornette, that was the one forward-thinking kind of aspect to his formation of the company, was he realized that we can't just do it on our own. We have to get the name out there on a bigger platform. Therefore, he was trying to make deals with WWF and WCW just to get that exposure, just to get the name of the company, just to get the fans to have some small idea that this could be an alternative for them. Old school Southern wrestling with some names that they know, the Armstrongs and et cetera, all the wrestlers that they know and love already, with that injection of youth too, the Chris Candidos, the Gangstas, the Thrill Seekers, all those younger names that Cornette was busy out there scouting and saying, okay, if we bring you into this company, you're going to do it our way. We're going to show you the old school way, what we believe to be is the right way, and you'll come up and you'll get better as a wrestler. We'll give you reps. You'll be working 3-4 shows a week at least on the road, and then doing TV probably on the Sunday or whatever in Knoxville, Tennessee. You'll learn what it is to be a full-time wrestler in the wrestling business, and that's what they were busy doing. And I think, as we've seen, a lot of those young talents got those reps and that experience that they needed and that guidance that they needed in their younger years.
Yeah, and then you'd end up seeing a lot of them that came through Smoky Mountain making it to television and becoming some decent names of the business. I mean, some maybe not as successful as others. Like I kind of got a little bit of a chuckle when the one match came on as Primetime Brian Lee, and I'm just like, oh, AKA Fake Undertaker. I'm like, good old Brian Lee. Like, and I didn't ever get a chance to see Brian Lee in that sense as much, kind of thing. That was always going to be the stigma behind Brian Lee, was that, as a fan growing up in the 90s, you ended up finding out that he was the Fake Undertaker, and you're like, oh, he's that guy that almost looked absolutely nothing like Taker, that they dressed like the Taker, tried to pass off as. I mean, in a storyline, as Chris Faithful joining us saying Underfaker. Yes, the Underfaker, Brian Lee. That was one name. Of course, we know Unabomb was the name that was used in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, would become Kane in the WWF. We know that Lance Storm, Chris Jericho had a time with Smoky Mountain Wrestling as well too, before moving on to bigger things. Just, an absolute ton of names that came through there that ended up becoming big. BDJ in the house. What's up, BDJ? Thanks for joining us. But yeah, so many names that it almost felt like it became a bit of a like you're saying, a bit of a feeder system where they got the experience that they needed in that company in order to be able to go on and make money with the bigger companies for the kind of television they were producing. For sure. And Cornette was always on the lookout for that talent. He was quite good at picking it. It's hard to do it before and everything, but you were talking about Brian Lee as an example. People laugh about that now just because of the one match that Vince had him all gimmicked out and he had to do this stupid job for SummerSlam or whatever. But look at Brian Lee, without that before, when Jim Cornette was scouting him or whatever. He's 6'10" or whatever. He's a good looking guy. He can talk. He can work in the ring somewhat, right? Like he's not remembered as a great one, but we didn't know that at the time. So what Cornette and Sandy Scott were seeing was that
this guy looks good, man. We can do anything with this guy. He's huge. He can wrestle. He can talk. He's got the skills. Maybe this will become one of our good young guys. Of course, you don't know at the time, but they went with it. Brian Lee was the first Smoky Mountain Wrestling champion when they had their first tournament. They
Yeah.
crowned him as the champ because they saw potential in him. Yeah, sure, that one didn't work out so great, but I mean, that was the thing. That's the thing about scouting young talent is you don't know, so you have to take some chances.
Yeah. And then sometimes there was names that were loyal to that particular company that a lot of people may have heard of outside of there because they didn't do a lot. And in particular, I'm looking at White Lightning Tim Horner, who was a staple as a babyface within Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Comes out to the Thunder Rolls by Garth Brooks, and I mean, watching his matches I'm like, Tim Horton, like, I didn't know anything about this guy that much. The name didn't ring a bell. I had to look into him. And again, he was very, very loyal to working in that particular area and didn't do a whole lot following kind of thing. He's actually become, I can't remember, he was sworn into some sort of form of government or something, like some government type thing. Now he's now some politician at some point, at somewhere kind of thing. Just recently, Tim Horner, the politician now. But I mean, there was nothing bad about them running with him as a baby face. It worked for their particular company. The fans seemed to be behind him, and he was the perfect installment for that type of style.
Well, at least it worked out for a while with Tim Horner until Jim Cornette came after him with a baseball bat. That's another story completely. But as we know, sometimes relationships break down in business and in the wrestling business.
Yeah, Chris right there, not his favorite person. Yeah, again, but they still rolled with it because the fans were behind him. It worked in terms of him being a baby face for their company at the time. So they did roll with the White Lightning at that point. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, a lot of great feuds that went on as well too. And it never hurt that you had on the commentary team Bob Caudle. Bob Caudle, I think, helped put over and sell a lot of what was going on time and time again. I thought Bob was fantastic to listen to as I was going through these old matches and episodes of the Smoky Mountain tapings. Caudle owns it on the microphone. He's fantastic.
For sure. And another very clever pickup by Scott and Cornette there, too, to get Bob Caudle. He was already well known in the business. He had been calling matches for Jim Crockett Promotions and Mid-Atlantic Wrestling during the Territory era. He had worked with a lot of the greats as he was coming up, including Gordon Soley and Jim Ross and all them. And then, of course, Cornette had guest color guys come in and work with Caudle as well, including Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone and Les Thatcher and other well-known names from the Southern wrestling area. And Caudle was one of those familiar voices that you know so well, just like us with Ed Whalen and such. You would never forget that guy's voice or that guy's delivery because he was one of a kind. And this was just, as we know, commentary is very important to the presentation of wrestling on TV. So Caudle was perfect. A familiar, well-known voice, a guy that called it old school, called it like a sport, like a struggle between two athletes, and again, worked in perfect with the presentation of Smoky Mountain, just the way Cornette wanted it. Old school is living hell.
You bet. And as you mentioned, Jim Ross being one of those ones that was on color with him, that happened after his WWF contract wasn't renewed the very first time. So he spent a period of time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling before being asked to come back. And I do want to mention that the news broke today about by Jim Cornette himself saying that he has just been diagnosed with colon cancer. So sending very well wishes and hopefully a recovery as well to Jim Cornette. Colon cancer is something that's claimed a few people in my family before. It is something to make sure to get checked out and do everything you can to fight that battle. It's never an easy one. So all the best to Jim and his family during these troubled times. But it was great to hear
Jim Ross
on there.
Yeah, Jim Ross you're talking about, right? Yeah,
Jim Ross, yeah. But like hearing him on commentary with Bob Caudle, it was like, man, these guys are great together. Him and Bob Caudle calling matches was an absolute delight to listen to.
Yeah, and how much it changes for the positive. the the presentation of your wrestling matches on TV, just to have those voices, those kind of like an authority figure too, that's going to break down the match for you. These guys know wrestling very, very well. They've called it for years. They're instinctual and knowledgeable about the product. So having them bringing it to the fans, helping the fans to digest what's going on in the ring, both long-time knowledgeable fans and then new fans coming from outside the wrestling bubble, being able to figure out what's going on in these matches, what's going on in the angles from these old experts that have been doing it for years. Just very nice touch and very important part of Smoky Mountain.
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout, if anybody is interested in watching Smoky Mountain, we're going to, again, play a matchup here very shortly. But if anyone's interested in watching the old programming, if they're interested in watching the old the big events, were they broadcast on paper? I couldn't find out if they were pay-per-view events or if they just happened to be like larger tapings or something like that, Bob Smokes. But the large premium events that they put on were all on YouTube as well too.
Yeah, the night of legends being the big one. I watched a bunch of that before in prepping for this show. There's the Bluegrass Brawl and the Fire on the Mountain and the King of Kentucky, and they had some pretty cool names. But again, Cornette was more about those live shows, getting that ticket money for the company, and he was operating in some pretty big venues and getting some pretty big crowds for these special events, and also, of course, designing his angles to lead up to the big shows.
No. Chris Faithful saying larger shows sometimes on tape. So, okay. But yeah, all can be found on YouTube. Like this stuff is all there, including all, I think it's 4 full years of the Smoky Mountain television program itself, right from the start, right to the bitter end of it as well too. And it's all on a playlist out on YouTube. So again, I recommend anybody going out and watching this because there's so many great matchups, so much great talent. I think it's good a time as any, Pop Smokes. Do you think we should show that matchup? Rip Rogers and Mr. Wonderful from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. All right,
yes, please.
We are going to do just that. Let me get this loaded up for everybody here. We will do a share screen. Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Here we go. And that's I love it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's great, good old-fashioned professional wrestling with, easy enough storytelling. You had a clear baby face, you had a clear heel, everybody got their stuff in. The match didn't have to go long. How long were we? Maybe 7 minutes tops, 6-7 minutes kind of thing.
Yep.
Perfect.
Quite sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
And think of the workers there too, the boys, Orndorff and Rogers. They did a full match. They did all their stuff, and nobody got hurt. There wasn't anybody doing a shooting star press where they were going to land on their head, possibly, or whatever. We all know the story of Chris Jericho when he was first starting out for Smoky Mountain, wanted to do some kind of crazy flipping press off the top rope, practiced it before the match, which the show that night was one of their big shows, their pay-per-view, so to speak. And Jericho gets up to do the move on the top rope, tries it, breaks his goddamn arm right on the afternoon of what was going to be the biggest match of his career at that time. And now they have to get him medical treatment. I think he still did the match, but obviously, he's got to take care of that arm. He's not going to be able to perform as well. So there's a little lesson there too. Chris Jericho learned that one the hard way. Don't do shit you don't know how to do.
Yeah, that's just it. Yeah, if you're not ready to perform it, don't do it at all, kind of thing. And don't do it when you're on the brink of, one of the biggest nights of your career at the time. You're in a big spot for the company. You don't want to let said company down. You shouldn't be doing it. Again, he learned that lesson just like many have before him, and many will time and time again throughout time. That is professional wrestling for you. But Pop Smokes, anything else you want to go over here with Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Smoky Mountain used the traditional tropes of kind of having villains and heroes kind of thing. That is a classic way of dividing the crowd and getting everyone rooting for the baby face and heckling the heel and all that. He wasn't much for having the people that are in between. But one of those acts that he had that did blur the line was, of course, the Gangstas, right? Uh,
Mhm.
New Jack and Mustafa. And wow, that's an interesting story. And people have probably watched Dark Side of the Ring and stuff and learned some stuff about New Jack when he was first performing for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It was tough. They were African American wrestlers in Tennessee and the deep South. They weren't popular for various reasons, and those flames were stoked a bit by Cornette and the other management saying, "Hey man, if there's heat there, like let's keep it going." Now that sometimes can be dangerous for the wrestlers and everything, but as you notice, New Jack not worried about that whatsoever. He said some controversial things during some promos that really got a lot of eyes on the product. Nowadays, people don't like booking like that because they call it the wrong kind of heat and all that. And there's probably some merit to that argument as well, but it's certainly got Mustafa and New Jack going well and really hitting the ground running with their time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And that was certainly an interesting time. I also wanted to bring up another one of the big stars that was made in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and that was, of course, Chris Candido,
Yeah.
who unfortunately died very young, but was on his way to being, I don't know, the next Ric Flair or something like that. He was going to be a big wrestler, probably. He had all the skills, all the talent, and was obsessed with wrestling. And he also had a girlfriend who was very good looking and had a very sharp tongue to her as well. Once Cornette met her, he realized that this Tammy Lynn Sitch, she's got to be part of the act as well because she had a charisma, kind of a negative charisma around her, but even the WWF fans know her from her time in that company as a manager as well, and
Yeah.
she was licensed to print money for a long time there. Had some hilarious promos where she put some people down quite badly, and then being one of the beautiful ladies of wrestling, that garnered a whole hell of a lot of attention. So her and Candido as a team were pretty much unstoppable at that time. And one of the big things for Smoky Mountain Wrestling is that Candido had been up working in the Northeast and where the office of the NWA was. Of course, the NWA was in shambles by that time. It wasn't the conglomeration of successful promoters that it once had been. But that belt, Sweet Charlotte, the 10 pounds of gold, was still had that history behind it and that desirability. So when Chris Candido won that belt, the NWA title, the same belt that Kerry Von Erich and Ric Flair and Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes and all the classics had held, he brought it down to Smoky Mountain Wrestling and started defending that belt down there for a number of shows, for a number of their big shows as well. So that brought a legitimacy to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, as it would any promotion, to have that belt and that champion, even though it was past its due date. Again, the kind of prestige that belt held and the pride with which Candido held it, that was a feather in the cap of Smoky Mountain Wrestling as well.
It really was. And unfortunately, then in 1995, they would officially close up shop due to lack of television, pretty much the end of the territory system entirely. A lot of factors that played into them shutting the doors once and for all. And that pretty much shuts the doors on this part of the conversation. And just as that happens, a divine light comes stepping in. He brings it in. Hello, James. How are you doing? Good to see you, my friend. Appreciate you stopping by. But yeah, Papa Smokes, Smoky Mountain has been great to catch up on. Glad to do it. I told Bobby we'd come back to this comment here. PCO Wrestling, Dan Maff at Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, MLW Resurrection on July the 5th. Glad to see MLPs doing really good business, really good work. A lot of great things happening out of there, crowning their new champions just recently as well too. So happy for them. I know that that most recent event there will inevitably be put up on YouTube, so I think we'll have to catch that one once it is Papa Smokes, and then we can go ahead and go from there and do a talk on it. Great little listen, fellas. Just getting ready for a show with Bad Luck Folly. Damn, man, good for you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, are you working against Bad Luck Folly, or is he just on the show? Like, what's the scoop there, and which company is that for? Curious to know, but very much looking forward to being able to get our eyes on whatever's going down there once it becomes available as well too. But yeah, Papa Smokes, I'm stoked. It's fun talking about a trip through the territories. And what do we got coming up next week? Well, next week here on Ring Respect Radio, I think it's time to test people's knowledge a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. It's his promotion in New Zealand, Fale Dojo. Nice, fantastic, awesome. Make sure to, if we can see anything from that, it would be fantastic. Love to be able to watch that. But yeah, Papa Smokes, next week, it's time to challenge that knowledge once again. It's time for everybody to put themselves to the test, because we're bringing back WTF Do We Know About Wrestling Trivia Night here next Thursday night on Ring Respect Radio. Woo! It seems like it's been a hot minute since we did the last Trivia Night here, Papa Smokes, but I'm ready to light it up once again and bring on a panel of guests here on screen, as well as bring in our live chat. So for those who have never played before, don't know, we do that right here on the channel to do live trivia. And again, James, next Thursday, if you're free, we would love to have you on to do the trivia. James, please, hopefully you're free next Thursday night and you can be on screen with us and play some trivia. Would love to set that up. But how it works is, if you want to participate, YouTube and Twitch are available. We will ask live multiple choice questions that you can answer, all of which are in the world of professional wrestling somewhere, somehow, from the past to the present and every company that existed in between. We ask questions about, and again, it is going to have that £10 donation from our good friend Mark Robson of Mark Talks. He's going to be donating to the charity of choice to whoever wins on the screen. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a great time. Bobby saying he just liked the video on YouTube. Appreciate it as always. Appreciate your support, Bobby. Think I am, not very, you don't need, trust me. We have one contestant on here who got exactly 0 questions right one time. So don't worry about it, James. It's all in good fun, my friend. It's all just for having a blast. It's multiple choice. Chances are you're gonna swing and hit one of them at least anyway. So I'll tee you up for something, brother. I'll tee you up for something.
And don't forget, Bob, we need a new Twitch champion. I am the current Twitch champion, but I will relinquish this belt because I'm one of the hosts on the show. We need a new Twitch champion, and it's going to happen next week.
We do, yeah. So everybody who wants to get participating on Twitch and YouTube, and again, James and anybody else who can, that we're going to reach out to, join us on screen next Thursday night. We are going to have a blast here on Ring Respect Radio. We'll mention Honor Ramble coming up a quarter after the hour here. You're going to be able to join Auntie Collins, I believe, doing a solo show here tonight, giving you the latest on Ring of Honor professional wrestling. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've got coming out and leave you guys with the calendar on our way out from the show here tonight. But in the meantime and in between time, Papa Smoke, cost me money. Look at that beautiful ticker. Tell those people what you got coming up. Where can they find you?
You got it, Munson. I can always be found on Elon Musk's free speech wonderland known as X. I am at smokes_papa. And on Twitch, I am known as papa_smokes_.
That's where you can find Bob Smokes. As for myself, Bobby Munson, over on the X, it's Real Bobby Munson, Instagram threads at Video Bros SK, Twitch Video Bro _Bobby Munson, and on the Blue Sky, Bobby Munson. And what's coming up? Well, I will mention that this Saturday, Andy's Martini's in the house. Speaking of someone who won a YouTube championship recently, not that long ago, Andy's Martini might want to participate in trivia next Thursday night. But bottoms up as well too. But yes, what's coming up here for myself? Well, you're going to be able to join me this Saturday. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be joined by a phenomenal panel that consists of Astrid Pizarro, Melball Collins is going to be joining us, and Auntie Collins as well too. It's going to be we're going to be doing the Love Your Health special in cooperation with Mental Health Month here as well too. We're going to be talking personal stories, talking about ways that we cope with mental health, how we deal with it, and also sharing stories with you, the listeners. So come and join us in the chat. Let's talk about mental health. Let's not make it a stigma anymore. Let's break that stigma and be able to open up and talk about these things and be able to support one another. So join us for Love Your Health, 4 p.m. Eastern time this coming Saturday. Sunday, I'm back with the boys, 11 a.m. Eastern time, Point of View, talking about the weekend sports. And Papa Smokes, I know I'm holding you up from watching the Jets game right now. It's do or die for the Jets tonight. Hopefully, yes, I won't be talking about this being their last game coming this Sunday. I hope I'm going to be talking about them fighting back and making more miracles happen, because I've been rooting them on for you. Hopefully this night turns things around, but we'll get you to that game very, very shortly here, Papa Smokes.
Good. We need a miracle. We already used up our miracle last round, so I'm not expecting too much, but go Jets, go always, always.
Go Jets, go. That's right. In fact, you know what? Go Canadian teams, go right now. But surprisingly, not doing too shabby across the board for Canadian teams at the moment. But we'll talk more about that on Sunday. As always, you can catch myself and Papa Smokes on Prairie Pro Wrestling every Saturday afternoon. Call it a new match from the vault. This Saturday, the PPW Championship is on the line. It is Michael Allen Richard Clark, the champion, in his first title defense against the intangible Zoe Seger. I believe that one's this Saturday. Hopefully I haven't effed that up, but if I have, well, tough shit, you'll get some other match. But anyways.
That is a good match too, man.
It is, yeah.
It's always hard to watch it while we're filming, but when we call it later on, damn, two excellent wrestlers, and they put on a good one. Everything goes right in that match. It's good.
It is really, really good. And again, can Zoe Seger make history and become the first ever female champion of Prairie Pro Wrestling? Find out this Saturday afternoon on the channel, and make sure to subscribe over there. But where you want to also subscribe is OLE Podcast. You can find us across all social media, including Instagram, Threads, X, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. But we're also on YouTube and Twitch. That's where we're broadcasting right now. Make sure to give us a subscribe here, turn on the notification bell, give us a thumbs up, and leave us a comment if you're watching this on replay. I'm always checking those comments, looking to get back to you, have a conversation about wrestling or anything else that you're looking to have a conversation about. But that's going to be it for us this week on Ring Respect Radio. Stay tuned for the Honor Ramble coming up at quarter after the hour. Here is the weekly streams calendar for OLE on your way out. Take care, everybody.
Never gonna stop, never gonna change, never gonna do the things you say. Run my own way to get there. Fools are calling and I don't seem to care. In the air, no more crowd, just the opposite kind of few clouds. Don't tell me this time is coming for the sake of all your lies.